welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Sam Menzie, and we have a great show for you today. First topic we'll be going over is the Cubs having trade interest in the Blue Jays first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr., then going over some prospect call-ups, including Drew Thorpe getting called up by the White Sox, Hurston Waldrop getting called up by the Braves, and Adel Amador getting called up by the Rockies. And finally, recapping the notable series from over the weekend, the London series for the Mets and the Phillies, and then the illustrious Yankees and Dodgers series. Before we do all that, I'd like to ask you to please like and follow the show. We do get a number of questions from viewers, so to ensure that your question does get read on the air, please do the link, gsmcpodcast.net. It really does help the show, and it really does mean a lot, so thank you so much for that. And let's get back into the show today. All right, so first topic we're going over, as I said, is going to be about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the trade interest from the Chicago Cubs. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, it was reported over the weekend from Bob Nightingale of USA Today in his Sunday column about rumors around the league that the Cubs have privately discussed trading for Blue Jays first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, I don't know if this is really an entire surprise, as I'm sure a lot of teams discuss talking about trading for players all the time, whether they're available or not. But it does bring up an interesting situation because we have heard some rumors about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the past few weeks, and I think this is kind of just building onto it. So I did want to get on here and talk about my just overall thoughts on it and what I think of it. So, yeah, I just thought it was very interesting, and yeah. So, first of all, Guerrero's having a great season with Toronto so far this year, having a weighted runs created plus of 136, so having a very, very solid season in a year where a lot of batters, a lot of position players are underperforming their usual statistics. Vladdy has done very, very well and has been very consistent for an otherwise pretty underwhelming Blue Jays team. Now, I think overall it is showing that Guerrero's trade interest is probably going to be at the highest it is ever going to be because he is having such a great season, and it is realistic at this point that he could be traded. Now, the fit on the Cubs, just talking about it here, I think would be a pretty interesting fit. I think, first of all, first base is definitely a position that is of need to the Cubs. I think that is very clear. Right now, they do have Cody Bellinger there, which is good for the defensive positioning at first base, but I just don't know if that's really what you want out of a first baseman. You want more of a hitter, and that's what Vladdy is. I don't think there's a huge discrepancy between the hitting between Bellinger and Vladdy, but I do think Vladdy is better. He's younger, and he has more control, so that's an interesting situation there. But I just think overall adding Vladdy would be just adding a big bat to this Cubs team, which I do think they need. I think whether he plays first, whether he plays DH, I mean, he could even play third. I doubt it, but hey, he played it with the Blue Jays this year, so anything's possible, I guess. But I think that overall it's going to be very interesting to see if he does get traded to the Cubs, where he would play. But I think that overall this fit for the Cubs makes a lot of sense on paper. Again, I think the Cubs need another big bat. They have some good pieces there, like Cody Bellinger, like Seiya Suzuki, but after that, there's no one really that consistent. You, of course, also have Dansby Swanson and Nico Hoerner, but I think Vladdy would be the other big power bat in this lineup with Bellinger and also with Suzuki, if you want to consider him a power bat. So I think Guerrero would be a great fit for this team and would honestly make a lot of sense. I think that's why they're discussing trading for him. And I think first base has been a little bit of a hole for the past few years. Yes, you're playing Bellinger there, but Bellinger can play the outfield as well. He has other versatility. You also can put him there to get some other people's days off. You can, put him at DH. And, before Bellinger was at first base, he was playing center. Obviously, Pete Armstrong is playing center now, but before that, you had Michael Busch, who's good. He's had a really good season for them, actually, but I just don't know if he's a long-term answer, and he also has more versatility in the first base, so he could be a player of interest to them just because he can play all around the diamond. And first base is kind of a hole for them. I mean, just a few years ago, they had Alfonso Rivas playing significant minutes for them at that first base position. So overall, I think that Vladdy coming to the Cubs, potentially getting an extension as well, would help out getting a long-term fit on this Cubs team and really would help out here with this team getting a new power bat. I think it would make a lot of sense that way. Now, the question is, are the Blue Jays going to trade him? This conversation is great to have, but it's meaningless to discuss if there's no chance the Blue Jays to trade him. Now, I don't think I'd ever be saying this, but I think there is a chance that the Blue Jays do trade Vladdy. If I was in charge of the Blue Jays, I would trade him, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that the Blue Jays are very close to becoming the MLB's version of the Chicago Bulls, or the MLB's version of the of the New York Islanders. Two teams that, if you watch the NBA or watch the NHL, you know are very mediocre, just stuck in their ways. Are not bad enough to get a high draft pick or a impact prospect to help out the organization, but not good enough to actually be a championship contender or make a long run in the playoffs. I think that's currently what's happening with the Blue Jays. I think if they continue with this core, they're going to be very close to that. And trading one of your stars, even as painful as it might be, as he's homegrown, a son of a Canadian baseball legend, of course his father, Vladimir Guerrero Sr., a Hall of Famer, as painful as it would be because of the storylines, because of just, again, how good of a player he is, because of how marketable he is, you might have to do it. And I think trading him would signal to Blue Jays fans that, we're fed up as well. We want something new. We want a breath of life in this organization. And getting a top prospect for Guerrero, I think, would make a lot of sense. And would, again, maybe breathe new life into this organization. So that is something that I think could be a possibility here. And it is something I'm looking at. Now, the question is, do I think the Blue Jays will trade Guerrero? Honestly, no. I don't think so. But I also think it's 60-40. 40% they trade him, 60% that they don't. Because they are in the situation where they are right now, where they're last in the NL East, and they're pretty significantly out of the playoffs right now, I think they do have to think about it, and they know that. But I just don't know if they'll actually go through with it because, again, of how much he is a face of that franchise. But hey, if the Cubs offer them a package that they can't say no to, what are they really going to say no? That's what you have to ask. I mean, the Cubs have an amazing farm system. They have Kate Horton, Owen Cassey, Matt Shaw, Kevin Alcantara, James Triantos, Moises Ballesteros, Jefferson Rojas, and of course, Pico Armstrong, who just graduated from the prospect list. Those are all significant prospects. I mean, in MLB Pipeline right now, my preferred prospect, they have seven prospects in the top 100, and that's with, again, Pico Armstrong just graduating from the list and probably being a top 100 guy if he didn't graduate. So they have a lot of prospect capital, and if you're the Blue Jays looking to trade Guerrero, is there really a better team than this? So if I'm the Cubs, obviously you're not giving up Kate Horton or an Owen Cassey, a Matt Shaw for a Guerrero. I don't even think you'd give up Kevin Alcantara, but a guy like James Triantos, Moises Ballesteros, Jefferson Rojas, one of these guys who are lower on the Prop 100 but still significant prospects, I think will make a lot of sense to go to Toronto. I think it will be a fair trade, and it would make a lot of sense. Again, Guerrero isn't just a rental. He has a year after this as well, a full year. You can, if he does well in this half year, they trade him for as well, you can extend him. You can extend him in the offseason. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And maybe they don't trade him now, but they trade him later, and the Cubs show interest. So I think overall it does make a lot of sense for the Cubs to show interest in Guerrero. I think he's a really great fit on this team, baseball-wise, off-the-field-wise. A guy like Guerrero going to a big market would make a lot of sense because, again, of how marketable he is, because of who his father is. So I think that would make some sense as well. So overall, I think this makes a lot of sense. I don't know if the Blue Jays are willing to trade him, but if I'm the Blue Jays, I definitely look into it. Again, I'm not actively shopping him, but I'm definitely listening to offers for people who call, and believe me, there will be a lot of people calling, so that would be interesting. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Blue Jays do move on and if the Cubs continue to show interest in Guerrero. After that, I also think Pete Alonso is also a pretty great fit for this Cubs team, another power-hitting first baseman. Alonso only is a rental, of course, so that is kind of a question mark. And the Cubs right now aren't doing the greatest. I mean, they have fallen all the way down in their standings right now. They were at the top of the NL Central for a little bit, now have fallen to second, but are still, even though they're in second, they're a half game out of being in last, and they're 2 games under 500. They still are in the playoff picture, which is crazy because of how bad the NL is this year, but are they really going to go all in this year and buy? With Guerrero, it's also for next year as well. You also get him for next year. If you're getting a guy like Alonso, that's really only for this year because you don't really know how likely it is to extend him. So that could be interesting. The thing with the Cubs is, I think there are a lot of more positions that you have a need at than first base. I think catcher is one of them. I don't like who they have a catcher right now, and I'd look to upgrade there. I also think some other positions, maybe like third base, you could also look to upgrade, getting an outfield bat. But overall, Guerrero is a great player still, and it's not like you couldn't use a first base upgrade. It would allow you to have more versatility with the entire lineup, including Bellinger. Sorry about that. So that would be interesting. And yeah, I think overall this would be a good move for the Cubs to make. Of course, you're getting a great player. And if I'm the Blue Jays, I really think about it with where the franchise is right now. So yeah, that was our first segment for today, talking about the Cubs eyeing Blue Jay star Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and just talking about my thoughts on it and what I think it'd be a good move. We'll be moving into our second segment now, which is going to be talking about Drew Thorpe getting calls up by the Chicago White Sox over the weekend. I'm going to tell you guys this is a very heavy prospect show. There was a lot of prospects being called up over the weekend, and I did just want to talk about them. So yeah, if that's your thing, stick around, and if it's not, still stick around. So yeah, we talk about that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?